Hi, welcome everyone. For the ones of you who don't know me, my name is Zucconi. I'm a lecturer in artificial intelligence and a science communicator. And if this is the first time you're watching, welcome to Gamedev Graveyard. This is the weekly show where we talk about a lot of things, from unfinished projects to games that didn't make it, prototypes that never got released, postmortems, all that kind of stuff that revolves around game development and the game industry, especially on the indie side. Now, before we start, I want to spend a few words, exactly as I did last week, to remember that right now a lot is happening around the world, and I think that somehow we all have a responsibility to stay updated on, what's going on. I think it's literally our responsibility. But at the same time, I understand that keeping up with all the news can be really intense, can be really stressful for many of us. So for a lot of people, this can be a very triggering moment. It can be a very stressful moment. So if that's you, it's okay to unplug for a few minutes. It's okay for unplug. So if you feel that you're being very stressed, I think it's really important not just to take a break, but to still have relaxed, fun content that you can just enjoy. And I think this is the spirit that I still want to carry on for today's episodes and the rest of the episodes. So if you need just 1 hour-ish to relax and just talk about games, then this is possibly you're possibly in the right place. So with that being said, I think it's time for me to introduce today's guest. He's Harry Alisavakis. And he's a game developer and a very talented shader master. You might have seen us tweeting at each other, commenting each other posts. He's very active on Twitter and Reddit. And he also authored two quite nice series. One is called My Take on Shaders, in which he's redoing shaders his way, mostly in Unity. And one is Technically Art, which is a weekly issue where he's sort of summarizing a lot of cool shaded projects that are going around on the internet. So with that being said, I think maybe we can introduce him and start talking about shaders and stuff. So hi Harry, how are you doing?
Hello Alan, hope you can hear me right. Hello everyone.
And for everyone who's listening, if there is any problem with the audio, just let me know and we can just adjust it as we go. So let us know. And if you have any question, please feel free to ask. And at any point, hopefully we will read you and hopefully we can address you. So how are you doing, Harry?
I'm rather well.
Oh God, it's a busy day. It's always stressful doing live streams. So I wanted to start the conversation by mentioning something interesting. So every time I have a new guest, I always release, a sort of thumbnail where I have something they made and the picture. And I didn't know what you look like. When we start chatting, I had no idea what you look like because I guess on the internet you're quite mysterious. You always have your own avatar basically on screen, and I can sort of sympathize with that because I too for a long time I've only been having basically a pixelated avatar which is sort of always appearing. So a lot of people actually didn't know what I look like, and I think that for you is the same. So maybe do you want to talk a bit about that? Why did you go for the avatar? Why you didn't use your own picture? Is there like any reason for that? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not really any particular reason. I guess that if I actually used an actual photo of mine, I would probably change it a lot. And I have this weird obsession with associating my brand with an easy to remember picture. And I mean, I just made that little avatar. I liked it and posted it there. And then I was actually too afraid to change it at some point. So yeah, it's not like I'm shy or anything. I mean, I posted some picture of mine before, not like a lot, but I'm mainly using Twitter for shader stuff and game dev stuff. So didn't really have any opportunity to like post my face. And right now also the avatar doesn't really match my face because I had to let the beard go.
I think that like
Uh,
it could be me without glasses and with the black hair. The hair is very it's getting very similar.
yeah, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I just stuck. I just stuck with it. So yeah.
I think it's very easy to recognize, and also I guess the name it's very specific. I've discovered that there are two other Alan Zucconis on the internet. Of course, I'm the
Oh, really?
famous one. Of course, I'm the right one. But there are other two, and for some reason, there's a picture of one which is dressed almost exactly like me, and Google thinks it's me. And there's one
Oh,
picture where
wow.
we dressed almost exactly the same, and I was like, no. but, but
Well, yeah. I guess at least I really won't have that problem. I mean, there are not a lot of Harry Alisavakis
oh,
out there.
really? Are there any more, or you're the only one?
Well, the only one. I mean, it's not a common name even for Greeks.
Okay,
So
so
like the surname is like really
yeah,
specific.
even mine, but somehow you would
Oh well.
imagine, you know. But beside that, so that's one thing that I was really keen in on talking about, and it's a fact, and it's I think maybe the thing for which I sort of started to know you online. So for quite some times, I think for more than 1 year, basically, you have been posting
Yeah.
online a sort of weekly thing on your blog, which is called Technically Art, and it took
Yeah.
me a long time to realize the sort of wordplay around technically art, because it is technically art, but it is technically art.
Yeah. Well, I think well, the name was obviously like a wordplay, though I was a bit afraid that it could be misunderstood. Like people would perceive it that I'm saying that the stuff I post there are they're not really art. They're like technically art. Like you can say, sure, it's art. Like yeah. But that obviously wasn't my intention. The main point is that everything I post there is basically usually around technical art. So there's that. But I also post like more artsy stuff. Like it could be music, it could be paintings, it could be anything. But I use the term like the technically art to basically describe that it's art, but it also has a bit of technique behind it. Like it needs a lot of skill for that. So yeah, it's like the name kind of came like that. So like a wordplay, but also like describing the whole thing.
What I always say to my students is that if it doesn't compile, it's not art. I'm sorry. It has to compile to be art for me. So
Yeah, well,
I know I think there's a really hidden beauty in code, but that maybe it's me being a bit crazy. But so how does it work for you? So you just go online and you get stuff, or do you go for theme? How do you collect all this stuff? How does it work?
uh, yeah, like the whole process is like a bit ridiculous actually. Yeah, the whole thing actually started because I wanted to like store a few good tweets I saw. Actually, I remember the real reason for it was a tweet by Dicky, I think his handle is, that shared the technique about normal mapped decals using deferred shaders.
Nice.
And yeah, I was looking for it like everywhere. I couldn't find it, and I was like, damn, I wish I could have like a way to actually store all these cool tweets. And then I was like, I have like infinite storage on my blog, so I would just store a couple of tweets. It started like with 7 tweets. It's ridiculous. To and then share them because they're cool. So why not? And after that, the whole process was that, I was scrolling through Twitter, which I do a lot.
I know.
And
I
whenever I
have the
saw,
same problem. That's why I don't sleep.
yeah, yeah, and I saw something cool that I liked, and I actually, liked it in Twitter. And afterwards, like at the end of the week, probably the same day, even like every Friday, I was just going through my likes up until the tweet of the last issue, and basically just copied every link of its tweet on a new issue. So like the process, like it's like nothing really. It was just me liking tweets. Uh, so yeah, it's basically like a monthly, weekly issue of all the tweets I like. But I also had the opportunity to promote a lot of new artists and really cool projects through that. So it was a win-win, honestly, I think.
It's nice. And basically, like you were missing the sort of bookmark feature on Twitter. So, but
Yeah.
I actually had the same because on my blog I have like I have millions of drafts for articles I want to write about. But I have one called like cool shader stuff where I just copy the link of stuff that I like, and now it's like 400 links, and
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
even load anymore because on WordPress, if you copy the link, you sort of embedded it. So just loading the page, I think my WordPress implodes
Oh no.
just because of that.
Oh no.
So yeah, I actually had something very similar because I started doing the oh god, what was the name? Shader Showcase Saturday.
Oh yeah. Actually, like I think it started. Like I gained a lot of following through that from the waterfall issue that you
Oh,
did, that you actually featured me.
but
So yeah, I actually remember that. Yeah.
I started for a sort of slightly different reasons because it was taking me too much to create tutorials. Like, I know people don't probably realize how long it takes me to make one because I have to make the thing not much, to write it and do the diagrams and everything. It take me months and weeks and years to do a tutorial. So I was
Yeah.
like, I need to find a way to release something weekly without dying, basically. And that was an easy way, but you know, even there, finding the right theme and the right resources was getting quite stressful. And I think that after seeing your technically art, I started to be lazier and lazier. And if you look at my first, oh god, what was the name again? My first Shader Showcase Saturday, I think that it was almost a tutorial. And then suddenly it was getting just a list of links. Because I was like, yeah, okay, I can't be bothered to do that. But so there's something quite interesting that I wanted to talk about that, and I mentioned it last week
Yeah.
when I was introducing you, and it's the fact that I have these very weird feelings about a lot of those kind of content because one side of me is very attracted to the shader stuff. So I'm like, I want to learn about this. I want to watch this. Let me see. But another part of me is terrified because every time I see something that is really good, I'm like, oh my god, I have no idea how to make this. I'm terrible at shaders. And so, in a way, it's a fuel for creativity, but at the same time, it's a lot of it can explode very easily onto like imposter syndrome when you see so many things done, when you see how productive some people are, when you see the level of production that some people have, and now I'm stuck in this sort of weird situation where sometimes it's hard to enjoy stuff, not because it's not good, but because sometimes it makes me feel bad, and it shouldn't. What's
Yeah. Yeah.
your feeling on that? Do you have something similar?
Well, obviously, I mean, I'm no stranger to imposter syndrome, and well, it helps that I kept repeating myself that everybody has that. Like especially when it comes to technical art, I get that a lot because my approach was really like top down. So I just started, like with reverse engineering simple shaders I found, and then just realizing how they work. But it's not like I have a really theoretical and a really, like back-end knowledge of graphics, like OpenGL and all that, or a really deep math background. So seeing a lot of complex stuff, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna make this like ever. I, you know, well, at least what helps me usually is that I approach it in a way that it's more like a creative process. Like I don't really care about the outcome. I just go around, change stuff, learn maybe a few things along the way, and then see what comes out of it. So I usually see like my nemesis in shaders are like clouds. All right, so I never got ray marching. I
Well,
never got.
it's a pretty complex stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah, well, I know, but I'm like obsessed with it now. Like I can't go outside and watch clouds and not think, I'm never gonna make that shader. And we have some really pretty clouds here. So yeah, I'm watching a lot of different ways and a lot of really cool clouds, and I'm not really thinking about approaching the same techniques they're using because I know that I'll probably fail. But I'm trying to mimic some stuff. So I made the cloud shader that I've shared before, and like the process behind it is like really weird, but the results kind of cool. So I was happy with that. I made a few cool scenes with that, and I was happy at this point at least. So I don't know. It's I also get a lot of imposter syndrome while looking at really cool and really complex stuff. But I'm just trying to work in the moment and see what I can come up with what I know already.
it's really interesting because I have something very similar as well. So a lot of the tutorials I've started, they started as a challenge. Well, initially I started tutorials also because I wanted to learn and remember stuff, and my memory is shit. I can say it's shit. But it reached a point where, it was getting quite tricky to create new content and making new content available. So I think that it started really to become a challenge for me, and I was like a challenge with myself, and I was like, okay, I really like this. I don't know how to do it, so maybe I should learn it and do a tutorial on that. And I think that this has been a sort of a really cool way for me to create content, because sometimes when you know something for a long time, you forget where things get complicated, and you forget where people will struggle, which part of the code will make people struggle. And instead, I think if you learn it as well, you have a lot of questions that you would not otherwise have came up with yourself, in your mind initially. And so I think I have something very similar. You mentioned the clouds. I worked on a volumetric rendering for atmospheric rendering because I wanted to get Rayleigh scattering, which is the reason why the sky is blue. So the people are watching and haven't heard of that. It's the thing that makes sky blue basically, and you can simulate that in a shader to make real blue sky like Unity does. And I had no idea how to do that. And I think I've started the project like 3 or 4 times, and every time I was getting a bit further, but then I was like, oh no, this is impossible. I can't finish this. And then I was dropping it, and 2 months later I was, reopening it and doing it again and trying it again. So yeah, it was a rather stressful experience, but I think it's that for me that's a very good message, because you fail only in the moment. You stop trying. If I had stopped the first time and never resumed, those tutorials would have never been there. And I think it would also have gave me the feedback like, oh, I didn't manage to do this, so I can't do this in the future. And I think instead being able to commit on a tutorial or whatever, and somehow managing to finishing it, unless it kills you, it's really good, because the next time you say, oh, I thought doing clouds was very hard. Now I've done them. So maybe I can do this next, this thing next. I can do clouds and lightnings. I don't know. I'm just making it up. But
Yeah.
so we have some comments in the chat, but unfortunately or fortunately they're in Greek.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I have no idea what they say.
those are all Greek. Yeah.
Do you know what they say?
Yeah, just say
Oh,
fire.
okay. You never know. I think
Yeah, yeah.
Italian, English, and a bit of French. That's where you lose me. But yeah. So I can see we have quite a few people watching. So I just just to remind you, if at any point you want to leave a question or you want to ask us something or you want to interact with me or Harry, just feel free to do so, and we will read it. There's probably 30 seconds delay, and of course, if we're talking, maybe we will reply to you, when we finish the conversation. But at any point, feel free to ask questions, and we're more than happy to answer them. So I can see that on your website, and I'm showing it now. You've worked on a variety of super cool effects. So I'm showing now a sort of portfolio video with a lot of your effects, and I can see that they're really diverse. So you go from water to clouds to tree to rivers to random effects where stuff explode and you have lasers and things. So what is the common theme? How do you come up with those ideas? Because some of them are amazing. So what is your inspiration? How do you come up with all those kind of sceneries and ideas?
Well, mostly it's like seeing stuff. I mean, I watch a lot of other cool creators and get a lot of inspiration from that. Some of them are also like some effects that I've always wanted to work. Like water was like it's like one of the big Seder
I know,
things.
right? I know, right?
Yeah. It's like the elephant in the Seder room, really. It's like I've actually never tried water Seders up until the more realistic one. I'm not sure if this one actually. No, there's a delay, but the one in the video at least. Not the stylized forest one, the other one. And I really never tried it before that because I'm like, oh, this is so scary. I mean, there are so many stuff to work with it, like scattering and refraction and all that. And I'm like, I'm never gonna get all of that right. But I eventually tried, and fun fact is that before some of my attempts, I never even tried like outdoor scenes. Like I posted a bunch of different environment experiments, and they're all interiors because I was too afraid of trying to work with trees and grass and Unity's terrain system and water and all that. So I'm like, just keep it indoors. So yeah, eventually, I saw really cool stuff around all these effects. I think that what drove me to actually dive into grass shaders, for example, was Rensei's grass. I think Rensei is his Twitter handle. And I saw that and I'm like, okay, I need to revisit grass, and started learning geometry shaders. And because I'm sure geometry shader resources are a bit scarce.
Well, there's nothing. I wanted to learn them.
Yeah.
And there is bloody nothing about them. And everybody's using the same two tricks. And I'm like, no. I want to know the theory. There is no fucking resources around it. So I couldn't make my own tutorials because, I want to go very deep. And I couldn't find anything that was really like proper documenting them.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, no, I'm going to learn geometry shaders. If regular shaders are weird, geometry shaders are like weird squared. Like... they just inject a whole different syntax in the already weird syntax of shader. So yeah, I started learning that. Roy Stan's tutorial on grass also helped a lot. And then I did a tutorial on geometry shaders and afterwards grass. So yeah, it kind of works like that. I see something cool, I'm like, I'd like to remake that or try and make that. And then I just go at it. The whole thing with the explosions and all that is me also wanted to go into VFX. So I also started working a bit with some visual effects using particles and all that. It's also funny because I started making all the VFX with a custom animating tool that I made, which is basically .win but a lot worse. .win, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I made it without knowing that .win exists, and spent a lot of time on it, and then realized that it wasn't as good, but I liked it anyway. And yeah, it didn't even occur to me to actually use Unity's particle system for those effects. So yeah, the first ones I made were a bit junky. They looked cool, but they were definitely junky. And then started working with particle systems and all that. So again, I saw a cool VFX from a game like Hades, or I don't know. Can't think of anything else right now, but yeah, so really cool VFX, and I'm like, I want to make something like that. And just go at it.
And I think it, something that really caught my attention is the fact that you've been working on a variety of different styles. For example, and I know in a way it's I think it's really good for portfolio, but I'm thinking, for example, there are a lot of creators that have a very specific style. Then as soon as you see them, it's like, oh, it's them. I'm thinking, talking about shaders, I'm thinking about Joyce, Minotaur. And basically when she makes something, you see it's her, because she has such a specific and well-crafted style. It's super easy recognizable. I think it's part of a brand now.
Yeah, well, she basically coined the gradient UVs.
Exactly. So you know immediately when she makes something, or if someone's trying to copy her stuff, you know exactly that they're trying to do that. And I've seen that, for example, you've done the opposite approach. So I had like a couple of clips with water, and one is a lovely stylized shader that I'm obsessed. I can see the sine waves. I'm obsessed with it. And another one is a really almost realistic scene that if it's small enough, you could believe it's a realistic scene. And I think that it takes a lot of knowledge and experience to be able to go from one to the other. Because of course, like, if you want to make something cartoony and stylized look good, it's a very different set of skills, because you have to convey emotion, you have to do stuff, and you can cheat a lot, and if it doesn't appear exactly as the reality, it's okay, because it's a style, and maybe you find a better one. But nobody knew how it was supposed to look like, so you can make it look like as you want. You can get away with everything. But to make something look realistic, I think is such a big challenge, because people are trained to realize when something doesn't look realistic. So you can it gets uncanny very easily. That's a thing. So
yeah, exactly. That's why I
go on.
Sorry, go on. No, that's why I usually prefer the more stylized look and more saturated colors a bit, and just more stylistic approach, because I know that if I try something really realistic, it will look off, or it wouldn't be. It would look good, but maybe like for a specific camera angle, like it wouldn't be too robust to actually be in a game, or be really dynamic and all that.
And also, like, water is the hardest thing you can possibly render. So making it like metal. We have solved metal. Come on, we can render metal perfectly, because metal is easy. Come on.
Yeah.
Physically based, metallic surfaces, conductors are easy to render. It's dielectrics that are a bit tricky. But we actually have a couple of comments there. Hopefully we can address. So Guillaume Domench, I hope I've pronounced it correctly, but I'm really bad. Ask any advice on how to learn how to write advanced shaders if we already know the basic stuff. I think that's a very good question, and it's one I get asked a lot of the times. What do you think? What is your take on that?
Well, I mean, it depends on how advanced, I guess. Advanced can go a really, really long way. Well, I mean, if you already know the basic stuff, at least the way that I learned some more advanced stuff was like, using black boxes, really. Like, as I mentioned, reverse engineering. Just found some stuff that, like some ready-made shaders that used a bit more advanced techniques and tried to figure out how they work, even if at start I didn't really know why they did what they did. So yeah, for me it was like, try to create something specific, look up the specific thing that you're having trouble to make, and then, try to understand how and why it works, I guess.
I think it's a very interesting question because, as you said, it really depends on what advanced means, and I think that for me you can go two ways basically. So one is you can use the basic stuff, but learning how to exploit that. So, for example, a lot of very cool shader effects are done with like the same 3 or 4 tricks. And I think there's a GDC talk showing how a lot of the VFX for Diablo 2 were done in shaders.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Yeah,
Diablo it's Diablo 3 maybe, yeah.
It's like it's the VFX Bible. Really.
And basically it's like, like that? So it's nothing crazy. It's just like taking UVs and, sampling UV twice or overlapping certain things or doing alpha channels and, doing some vertex shader to display stuff. So it's about using it, and I think in a way it's like saying, do I need better paint colors to be able to paint better? And the answer is, well, yes, but also even if you have like just one pencil, if you're really good, you can make a lot of really good stuff. So, even just black and white, or even just 3 colors, you can probably make a lot. So I think, even if you know basic stuff, it's about learning the tricks, I guess. Tricks that...
Sorry, go on.
And basically, I think that's the solution number one. And for me, solution number 2 is going the extra step and studying advanced technique, for example, like ray marching, stuff to do volumetric material. So all those kind of things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, but very often you don't need them. For example, have you seen the shader bottle that now everybody's obsessed with in Half-Life Alyx? Yeah. Everybody's obsessed about
it. It's the new trend. It's a new shader trend.
And right which, by the way, Pikuniko had one in 2D, and nobody made that viral.
Well, it wasn't in the VR, so I think that's what made it.
So we need to do Pikuniko in VR. And that, for example, it's not a volumetric shader. It's a cheat. It's cheating. Maybe there is a bit of, but it's sampling what's underneath. It's displacing it a bit, but essentially it's like sine waves and a lot of cool rendering stuff. But it's a simple trick. If you want to do it just 2D or even 3D, it's a very simple trick. And I think that when you watch, for example, apparently that shader was indeed inspired from, or at least, as a reference was used, Joyce, water shader. And her water shader, if you look at it, you can see how it works much better because, there isn't a lot of, stuff going on. It's much simpler version graphically. There is not as cluttered as the one in Alyx. So it's easier to understand how it works. And that is amazing. For example, I would say that if you want to use basic techniques and push them to the limits, then, Minions art is probably the best way to do it. If you want to get crazy advanced techniques, probably a lot of the stuff I do or a lot of the stuff that Inigo Quillets is doing, for example, it's really advanced. Yeah. It's really good. That's another level. So, and I have actually a learning shader page on my blog. It's called Learning Shader, that has different levels of knowledge. So I think you can pick the one that it's up to you. But yeah, so you were saying, Harry.
No, I just want to say that, like about Indigo Prillies and imposter syndrome, that if you just take a stroll down shader toy, you will just lose your mind over shaders. Like if you see, those are advanced stuff. Like it's crazy. And it's no polygons, no nothing, and they're just doing crazy
Shader
stuff.
toy is
But also
intense.
about the simple.
Shader toy is
Sorry?
intense, even for my GPU.
Yeah. Yeah. And about the simple tricks you mentioned, I also got reminded of the Journey Sun shader that you've also covered in your tutorial, which is like it has like a really cool GDC talk around how it was made, and they were discussing the lighting model, that they were just using the basic N.L, and just added some numbers, and it worked well for them. And it wasn't like physically based, like properly physically based, but it looked cool for what they wanted, and it's like a really, really awesome shader.
And yeah, it works well. Sometimes it's just about what it looks good for the game. So we have a question from Tim. Hi Tim. Evening Alan, are there any particular reasons for using code over graphs or vice versa? Oh, there's a lot of arguments about. It's a very controversial topic. So Harry, what do you think about that? What is your take?
Well, look, okay.
It's a heated conversation already.
Yeah. Well, node-based solutions are great. All right, like they allow you to experiment real quick, and they're really artist friendly, and you don't have to dive into all the weird nuances of code and all that. They're cool, especially if they're done correctly. Like I've used Unreal Engine's material editor, which is great. It's amazing. I've used the Shade application on iPad. I don't know if you know.
I don't have any Mac stuff, so I never used that.
I don't either. Just happen to use it on a friend's iPad. But it's an app basically for node-based shader creation on iOS, and it was the best node-based shader editor I've ever used. Like just like the swizzling function it has, it's amazing. So if done correctly, node-based solutions are great. But there are you gain some advantages and some disadvantages from node-based solutions. Like for me, the most annoying stuff, for example, is like math expressions. All right, so
yes.
I have I have a lot of really long and elaborate math expressions with a bunch of parentheses, and like a whole line would be a bunch of additions, multiplication, all that. And like this is doing it just with nodes, like really hellish. And I mean, you could use basically a node for a custom expression, like a custom HLSL expression or whatever. And it could work, but still, I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of node-based shader editing. And if we go into specifics, shader graph, for example, the Unity shader graph is not really there for me. I mean, a lot of people use it and a lot of people are happy with it, but for me, it's still not there. Coming from Material Editor, from the Unreal Engine, and Substance Designer, for example, which is not about shaders, but still it's a really nice node environment. Shader graph, it's still lacking a lot of usability stuff. And I really would not trade code over any node-based solution, since I can just, I don't know, like easily copy and modify and read, just change stuff on the fly really easily. And plus, compile times are, a lot faster. It's really easy to change stuff. Once in shader graph, I had to change a plus to a minus and almost had the breakdown. Because it's not just like backspace and just minus, just like that. You have to delete a node and then add a new node and then connect the two inputs and the one output. And like, why? Why?
It's I have very mixed feelings with shader graph in Unity. I'm not exactly sure why they didn't acquire any of the existing node-based solutions. Of course.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Amplify.
like Amplify, for example. There are a couple. So I don't know. Of course, they have acquired a lot of technology, so it seems to me something is going on there. Maybe I don't know, but that's my suggestion. I think that in terms of usability and performance, he has a lot of issues. If you look at the code he generates, it's all functions. It calls a function to do an addition. I don't know if that's a common problem with other shaders, or at least that's what he was doing when I started using it. Of course, they keep working on it, and I hope they will support it more and more. And as Salman SHH is saying, anything that takes away the possibility of syntax error is a plus in my book. Yes, it is. Also, with shader graphs, you're probably likely to, or any node-based editor, you're probably likely to make something work even if you have no shader experience and coding experience. With a shader in Unity, like a code base, it's like, I have no idea how this is working. And also the syntax that Unity is using for the shader, so not just the CG, which is CG, but the high level shader language, HL.
That's shader
I can never remember the name. that is messed up for me. So it's all weird. It has all its weird syntax. So it makes it's three languages joined together. And it's a mess for me. It's a mess. And it doesn't have to be like that. But that being said, my biggest problem with node-based editor is that, for example, there are a lot of cool shaders that I was looking for reference on Unreal. And people were posting a screenshot of their nodes. And I'm like, for fuck's sake. First of all, half the screenshots in a couple of years will be gone. Because we know screenshots on forums, they disappear, especially if you use other platforms to upload them. And oh my god, so small, I have to look at the nodes. If it's code, I could literally just copying and paste node editor from a picture. It's impossible. So you either give me a chance of saving an image and then putting metadata in the image that I can drag back. It sounds like a good idea. Yeah. I remember the game Spore used to do that. When you export your creature, the image of your creature was actually contained the metadata to import it. It's a mess. And as you said, mathematical expressions are a big no. Even something simple becomes a mess. I kind of wish you had a chance to write the mathematical expression as a single thing and then get it parsed. I don't know if they do it, but that maybe could be a solution. So
that's the custom HLSO thing. Yeah.
So we have a question from Angelo Ziflas asking, when is Sea of the Thieves water tutorial coming then?
Like
for you, I think. I don't know. I think for you, you're the water guy now.
Oh wow. I think Sea of Thieves has probably the best water out there. I mean, I haven't played the game. I've just seen videos and other people played, and I could stare at that water for hours, and I probably wouldn't be too good at the game, because I would just be staring at the water. But yeah, I mean, I definitely cannot even start thinking about how they did the whole thing. And the crazy thing is that because the water is so dynamic, and the ships also adjust their height and their position based on the waves on the water and all that they actually sync that in network, which is crazy.
Are you kidding me? Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's a multiplayer. So yeah, they actually sync the waves. Well, so probably there's some CPU in there, probably. Or actually, now that I think of it, that's not too crazy really, because if they're using something like world position, that's pretty deterministic. But still, I mean, the whole thing is really crazy. So yeah, Sea of Thieves, the water is big no for me. Until for now, at least for now. Maybe later I will probably be able to make it.
We're planting the seed, and maybe in 1 year time, We will have the tutorial.
It's a long way from my water shaders until I get I don't know half the quality of that
So,
shader thing.
speaking of water shader, you know that I really like the math stuff. So now I try to focus more on that because it's in a way it's sort of my trademark. You know, if there aren't any integrals in a tutorial, it's not my tutorial. If there is an integral of trigonometry, so I've seen this video of these like colors of this like colored object going deep down underwater and changing color based on water
Yeah.
absorption level. And I was trying to find the spectrum of light absorption of water and to use that to make a water shader that simulates the depth, but simulates not photorealistically, like physically based. So it takes the wavelength of a
Yeah.
color, and from that it gets back to how much it should be diffracted by water. It never worked. maybe one day it will, and you will know if it comes again. You will know that I managed to make it work.
All right, I'll keep an eye
So
out.
we have a question from Mitch McClellan asking, how do you foresee your career going, Harry? Freelancing versus working at a studio at some point?
Well, I guess after I finish with the whole military thing that I'm going through right now, I guess working at the studio would probably be like the best option for me. I mean, I like the stability and I like to actually be focused on a project that I can actually foresee, from the start until the end, or, at least from some point until the end. So having something stable and around the technical art or whatever is would, at least right now, it sounds really nice to me. But I also enjoy freelance stuff, so I'm not sure if I could do it for a living, but like something on the side. I really like, just taking my mind off my own projects and my own work to actually work on something small and like self-contained for freelancing. So I guess working at the studio would probably be the best main thing.
And I think it's really great because basically all the kind of work that well, not all, but a lot of the work you've done, because it covered so many different styles. I think that basically it has the potential to be very appealing to people that have a studio, because you can say, oh, I can do all this kind of stuff. I've been working so much, and I know it because I get so many requests to work on shaders stuff, from studios, but also from other industries that maybe might need a more technical stuff for VR, medical, other mechanical, other production companies. They often get in touch with me, and I'm like, I have too many things. I can't do it, and a part of me feels bad for saying no, because I have few people
Yeah.
that have keep not pestering me. Of course, they keep coming back to me, and I'm like, I can't focus on this right now. I have too many things. But yeah, maybe if you can use that, because I never used it as a way for me for getting job, basically for getting works in the industry. But if you work with that in mind, I think it can work really well. And to me, that's also very good advice for other people that might be wanting to get in the game industry or any industry computer related. Have a portfolio, have something.
Yeah, absolutely.
For my students, it's essential. Have a portfolio. Make stuff that it's portfolio ball. Make stuff that will look good on a portfolio. Look good is a very vague term, but they will make you look good.
Yeah.
That will show that you can do the things, and even if they're not perfect, show them improving. Because if you're getting out of the college, nobody expects you to be perfect at what you're doing. But if you're showing, this is what I've done 6 months ago, this is what I'm doing now, look at how much I've improved, I'm keen to learn. That, I think, it's a skill that is super welcome, not just in colleges, but in the industry, in any industry, I guess, because in the end you will learn something new. So it's a skill that I think it's kind of helpful, I guess. So
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
another thing that I wanted to talk about. So you've been doing a lot of you've been working on a lot of shaders stuff related and projects, but they tend to be all self-contained projects. So none of them wasn't really a game. And on your Twitter bio, you actually have game developer question mark,
Yeah.
which I find it kind of interesting. But actually, you've been working on a couple of game dev projects. One is called Machina. Do you want to talk about that a bit, maybe?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. The thing is that up until recently, I realized that I didn't even try to make a game outside of game jams for like years. So yeah, while I made small scenes and maybe small experiments, even like in coding, nothing was like a game. And yeah, actually the last Ludum Dare was a good opportunity for me to actually get back into the game dev scene. It The timing was also great because I quarantine and I had the days off and I had all the time to actually work on it. And I actually kind of like the thing I came up with. So yeah, I basically made it in 48 hours for the compo mode of the Ludum Dare. Um, it's I've tweeted a fair amount about it. Really, it's basically a tactical roguelike. Well, it's not roguelike in the jump version, but it could be a roguelike. Uh, uh, Card game basically. Um, so yeah, but like a deck building tactical thing. So it's turn based, and you can just make some strategic decisions based on the cards you have and the position the player has. You know, eh, that's the whole premise of it. So the Ludum Dare entry was basically a proof of concept on that. Like it was really solid on the mechanics, but the whole concept and the whole aesthetics was pretty much what I was thinking about. And I've actually managed to try and make it properly, and I've been working on it for like 2 or 3 weeks now. Basically from scratch because jump code, like it's unusable.
It's made in
Really.
48 hours. What do you expect?
Well, yeah. Actually, I'm really happy for how it turned out for 48 hours, really, and it got some pretty good scores too. So yeah, people liked it, and a lot of people, thought that if it were a full game, I could buy it and I could play it, and I also liked how it could go. So I'm like, why not? So I'm working on that right now. Still, obviously, really, really early, like amazingly early, and I'm trying not to lose focus and motivation on it. So yeah,
It's I think it's something very interesting you mentioned is that this started as a game jam game basically in 48 hours, which I think it's incredible.
yeah,
And if people are watching, it should be clear that when someone with your experience makes something in 48 hours, it's not like yes, it's 48 hours, but how many hours have you spent doing shaders? And so it's never really 48 hours because you're always bringing with you all of your experiments and all the kind of, failure and other projects that somehow adds to your knowledge. And you learn a lot
yeah,
from
of
that.
course.
So every time you make something new, if you're doing it properly, you will make mistakes, yes, but you will hopefully avoid other mistakes that you've done already in the past. And maybe a lot of those effects, if I had to make them from scratch, it would take me 48 hours for each effect. And instead, the fact that you had at your availability so much, such a library of effects and knowledge, I think it really makes a difference because suddenly you can actually you can reuse all of that. And I think that especially for so it shouldn't really, I'm saying this because if you're working on a game jam and if your game is crap, it's don't worry, because maybe it's crap because you didn't have enough experience. But don't focus on that. Focus on the fact that next time you will make a game, what can you learn from what went wrong this time, or what you believe went wrong? Is it time? Is it ideas? Where did you fail? Use that knowledge to fuel your next project, so that you will not remake the same mistakes, or at least that you will. If you remake them, you know how to spot them, and you know how to
Yeah,
somehow avoid them. And I think that this is an interesting thing. So we have a few more questions that I think perhaps we can try to address. So one from Tim again, asking, are games too pretty? A lot of current indie games look amazing, but are very shallow. Is it too easy to make things look good? What do you think?
no, absolutely not. Well, I mean, looking good can mean so many stuff, but well, for me, the main thing above everything really is not just like the visual quality of stuff, but basically the art direction and how that ties together with the game and the whole thing that the game conveys. So, a lot of current indie games look amazing. Yeah, well, yeah, it's not really easy. I wouldn't say it's easy to make things look good, really. But it's something that people focus on because first impression matters, obviously. So if you see like a video of a pretty game, you're like, I want to play that because it's pretty. And then maybe the gameplay is liking. But no, I wouldn't say that it's easy to make things look good, really.
So the question for Tim, I guess, is there any game in particular, now name and shame, is there any game that you think it's pretty but shallow, or the mechanic doesn't match the quality, the content of the game? I think this could be I guess an interesting conversation, I guess. Do you think there are other games that you would say it's pretty but there's nothing inside? Do you have that kind of feeling?
Well, I don't think I can. I don't know. I can recall a game like that. I can recall the opposite. Like really awesome and deep games with not that great of an art style and art direction. Like Undertale comes to mind. I mean, if you see a screenshot of Undertale, you really won't understand how great a game it is. Well, maybe Greece, Gris,
Greece,
yeah. Like that was a amazingly pretty game. Like the animations were the best ones I've seen to the game, really. I mean, it was really lovely. And it's not like the gameplay was lacking or anything, but, I would like it to be maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours longer, maybe. The puzzles were great, but, it was just like walking in puzzles and really awesome music, really awesome visuals. But, I mean, yeah, you could say that you could expect a bit more from it. It was really awesome, but, I think that's the only one that comes to mind, really.
It's very interesting. I had very similar experience with Greece, but also like I think it's because I really like puzzle games. So stuff like that maybe it doesn't necessarily resonate with the kind of stuff that I tend to do. In the meantime, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them, and hopefully we can address them. Now, there's another question that I want to ask you, and it's a question that I've been asking to every guest I had on the show, and you probably know what the question is. How many versions of Unity do you have on your machine? And by the way, I think that today or yesterday, a new LTS version came out, just to add a new one. Yes. So how many do you have?
Yeah, exactly. I have that too. Let me count, I guess. Well, still, I definitely have all those in the Unity hub, so that would be. I'm counting in Greek right now.
I remember I have the
Because
same. I
previously,
can't count in English. I have the same.
yeah, I have 13 versions in Unity
1,
hub.
3, 13.
Uh, yeah, 13, going from 2017.3.1 up until the LTS 2019. But I probably also have a bunch of Unity 5s too. But I'm not sure where they're stored.
So are you still using Unity 5?
No, no, absolutely not. But maybe it's still in my my
So
hard
the,
drive.
the the actual question is, why do you have so many? Because there was a point when I think I had 7, random number, because I was working on 7 different projects, like on different platforms, different consoles, and they all need their own version. I know. So
Yeah.
why that many? Is there a reason, or you just like keep installing them and you have endless memory space?
Well, yeah, a lot of them were just leftovers from they were just left there. Uh, some of them were from specific projects. I'm not working too many projects, but some of them actually were in that version, and I was too afraid to actually update.
I know. I know very well the feeling.
Yeah, like I have my main playground project. Like I call it VFX Lab because it was from when I wanted to start playing with VFX, and now it actually has like every shader experiment I've ever done for the past year or so. And yeah, it's in 2018.3. Too afraid to upgrade it to a newer version because I'm certain that things will break. I
Oh,
mean,
they
I don't know,
will.
like it has a bunch of
They
plugins and yeah.
absolutely will. Like I was being a bit of a troll today because when I was tweeting the article, the Unity article about the new release, and my only comment
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, look at the comments," eyes looking emoji. Because every time Unity releases a new stable version, the comments are killing it, and I can see it because there's a consistent history of not delivering stability when they claim new versions are even stable. And I
Yeah.
had that problem myself, and I think that now it's a bit hard to trust the claim of stability and support from Unity sometimes. And
Yeah,
it's tricky. I
exactly.
understand why. But at the same time, I think the new LTS version don't necessarily bring the stability that people want. And I think that's a problem. And also, I've just discovered that LTS, so long-term support, only lasts 2 years. And I'm like, that's not long-term support at all.
That's not really a long time.
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like, I was expecting like 10 years support. If you like, that's a reasonable time. Like to a game. Like, think about it. The
Yeah.
average time you work on a game is longer than is like 3 or 4 years. So it means that you're forcing people to change between projects because if they start in, they're not going to be supported. And if people are not familiar with console development, very often the versions of Unity you can use for develop on console are very specific, and sometimes you just have to upgrade because you're not be able to submit, for example, on PS4, well, PS5 maybe, on PS4 with a version is 2 years old. And that makes sense because the console are much more regulated, much more controlled. So this forces, the claim you should not change a game in the middle of the development. The Unity sometimes does. I don't think it holds because if you want that, then you should support them for 10 years, not for 2. But that's my take.
Exactly.
That's and you know that I'm very opinionated when it comes to code and when it comes to Unity. Mostly because it's a software I really like, and because of that, and because I use it every day for hours, of course I have a lot of opinions and I have a lot of
Yeah, obviously,
Stockholm
yeah.
syndrome with using Unity, with using Unity a lot and having a lot of issues with with the software that that they actually make. So that is a thing. So is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything else that you think we didn't cover today?
No, just wanted to mention that I shared a link in the chat because while we were talking about portfolio and around jobs around technical art, which is a great,
Oh
great,
wait, I
really
don't I
blog.
don't know if I don't think the links you can send links on the chat.
Yeah, yeah, well, I sent, but it's not really working as a link,
Oh,
so I
okay,
don't know.
yeah.
Maybe people could
But
copy it.
people can also
Uh,
find your links in the comment section in the description box. I'm a terrible YouTuber. What's the
yeah,
name?
so yeah, we can include that too. It's basically from Amy Stevens, great technical artist, and she has like a blog entry about how to apply for technical art jobs and has some really great pointers on portfolio and how to set up your CV and all that. So I thought it would be really interesting to share.
Yeah, I think if you have a chance, of reading those kind of content, it can really make a big difference. So I can
Yeah.
still I see we have still a lot of people watching. So if you have any questions for us, or any shader shenanigans, I should use that for the name of a tutorial. If you have any question, we be more than happy to answer. I know. You have shaded people ask shaded questions, and then hopefully we can see that. Oh, actually, there's maybe while people come up with questions, there's another
Yeah.
thing that actually you've been working on that I forgot to show. So you've been working on these small car game thing. Do you want to talk about that a
Yeah.
bit?
Well, that actually, I think that's fair to say that it belongs to the Gamedev Graveyard for now. Yeah, it was actually one of my previous attempts to actually make something playable. And it actually originated from a small experiment I did inspired by Kenny's work. Kenny from all the assets and all that. He posted a small game he made with cars that use spherical
I think I
colliders.
remember. I think I
So
remember that.
yeah, yeah, it's just like sphere colliders and rigid bodies and just like forces and all that. And I was just curious to see how much juice I could get out of it. Turns out you can get a lot out of it. I mean, um, that small prototype. I mean, you're also showing it on the video. It turned out pretty fun, and I was actually a bit excited to started working on it, and I was excited to make the car model, even if it sucks. But I learned a lot
It's
from it.
low poly. It's called low poly. It's called low
What?
poly.
Oh, that's not low poly. That's like it's definitely not low poly. Yeah, it wasn't made in that philosophy at least. Yeah, but still, it turned out fun. But then I lost motivation mostly because it gave me more anxiety than enthusiasm. Because I was like, okay, so I have a car working. I made some really, really basic enemies that have the dumbest AI in the world, but they look like they're chasing you, and it's really fun. And then I was like, okay, I have to make everything else. Like, how would the levels work, and how will the core game look like, and different cars and different models and all that stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not going to deal with this.
Too much.
So yeah, that project was abandoned for now, at least. I did really like how the visuals turned out. But the thing is, I kind of mentioned you that before, that when you're in technical art, you can't really just leave things ugly or with bad code. It's really a curse because you're coming from both the coding world and the art world. So like when you're making a prototype, you can't, like when you're just a programmer, you probably don't really care about graphics. you're like just gray boxes everywhere and just placeholder, ready-made assets, whatever, and you don't care. Like there's programmer art for that reason too. And yeah, when you're an artist that you're not really too well versed into code, you just don't care about the code being robust and really flexible and versatile and all that. So it's easy to make a prototype if you're the one or the other. But at least I don't know. That's my experience, at least as a technical artist, I guess. Is that when I'm making something, I cannot leave it looking with placeholders and all that, and I cannot leave the code being a mess. I really need everything to be good from the get-go, and that's messing a lot with me.
It's very interesting because to my students I give the opposite advice. I'm like, make it look shit because it has to feel good even with boxes. But I was talking on Twitter with Oscar Stahlberg, the guy who made Bad North, and he mentioned something similar to what you said. He said, I cannot work on something that looks ugly, or something on that line. And I think it's really interesting because, well, of course, it shows also the level of skills that people have, but also what probably is fueling them. The fact that they need to see stuff looking good, and that's maybe why they keep iterating on things until they looks good. And I think that it's really what makes sometimes the difference between something that is okay and something that is really, really, really well done. So we have a few more questions that hopefully we can answer. One is from Guillaume asking, what do you think about WebGL and shaders on websites?
I think it's an interesting field really to look into. I've dabbled a little bit with 3JS, worked on a small website for the place I used to work. And it has a lot of potential. I mean, at least in the whole branding industry and all that, just making stuff pop. Shaders are, made for that exactly. So, especially at least in that kind of, advertisement, branding, publicity, all that, I think shaders have a really good fit in there too. Now, I'm not really sure about games, at least right now, until I think there's a framework coming out that's really low level for graphics on the web. It's not WebGL, it's called something else, can't really remember it right now. Which could be an interesting thing to see, that, like, you could play games right in your browser and they could be really, really good looking games. And 3JS is there, I think, already. Yeah, WebGPU, that's right. So I guess there is some potential in there, yeah, but haven't really worked with it, but yeah, could be interesting.
So we have a question from Saman asking, do you feel more motivated on a project when you see visual changes or more hidden gameplay system stuff?
I'd say 50-50. Well, it's like I'm like right now I'm trying to work on the proper version of Machina. It will probably change name, but I haven't come up with a better name right now. And I'm working on visual stuff and getting them up to a point where I'm happy, and then starting working on systems and see that they work, and then go back and forth. And it's a really nice change of scenery, to go working from programming stuff and then go back to shader stuff, and then maybe like connect it together, like when you have some kind of feedback effect, you can have a system for that made like in the back end of the code, whatever, and then you can actually trigger some really cool shader effects, so you can actually blend those two together, which is fun.
So go on.
Yeah, no, it's I'd say 50-50. I mean,
for me it's quite tricky because I have so much pleasure from writing code that looks good and feels good. So when I see like the pieces of code that fits together, I'm like, yes, this is well connected. This is well separated. Single responsibilities for each class. Yes, that's usually what makes me, when I find like a good link statement, I'm like, yes, that's really what makes it for me. We have a technical question from Wesley Brannan asking, are there any shader limitation in 2020 for iOS we should keep an eye out for? It's a very technical one, so I don't know if we have a chance to address it, or if it's a bit too specific.
Well, yeah, I haven't worked with iOS at all, so I really cannot answer that. I don't know. I think that Metal doesn't support geometry shaders, but I think that's it. That's what I've heard. So, like, that could also not be true too. So,
And
yeah.
Angelo is asking, any plans to play around with shaders and materials in Unreal in the future? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, I've worked with Unreal for a bit. I even have really few of my tutorials on my blog. Also have some nodes for the material editor in there. Well, right now it's a bit. I'm a bit. I hesitate to make the leap to actually try and make something in Unreal Engine. So, I wouldn't have a reason to actually work with Unreal Engine and make more shaders for Unreal Engine. So maybe at some point, if I actually find, like the motivation and a proper reason to dive into it. So yeah. Oh, Joyce is here. Hey, Joyce.
Oh, hello. Oh, don't worry. We still have a few minutes left. I think we actually mentioned you a couple of times, but I think it's unavoidable when we do shader stuff. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a very inflammatory question from Salman asking, want to start a fight, spaces or tabs?
Yeah, well, I write all my shaders in just one line. I don't even use no. I don't know. I use tabs, but yeah.
So it's very interesting because I have a dear friend that is working with a lot of he's doing a lot of interviews with developers, and he told me this trick that it's maybe this is more inflammatory than your question, and he says that if you want to hire someone and you ask the question spaces or tab, if they have an opinion that is not whatever the company is using already, don't hire them. Yeah. That's what he mentioned. I don't know if someone else is actually going for that approach. And his logic behind is that people that are too opinionated about something so small probably are going to create issues when they're working on another part of the code, and maybe they're doing some empty refactoring like brackets and stuff like that. That's what he mentioned, and I think it's a very interesting take on a proxy to see how people might behave on code written by someone else. It's probably not a proxy I would go for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at least for me, even if, I wanted to apply somewhere and they used spaces and Allman style brackets and I don't know, like some weird code styling, I would try at least to, I'd like to try and make it as they wish, basically. So just compromise. It's okay. I used to actually use Allman style brackets, and then I changed to KR. Like, same line with the function name and all that. So, whatever. I mean,
I think it's a bit when people ask you, oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the only answer is like, in your company, but in a better position, in a higher position in your company. So it's a trap. It's always a trap. So we have another question from Wesley Brannan asking, how about making some videos or discussing multiple ways to fake reflections in a game engine such as Unity? I have had a terrible time trying to find information on this subject.
Yeah, and for a good reason.
Exactly, for a good reason. Well, personally, I think it really depends on what style you want to achieve, because the way in which you do reflections are faked. Like, unless you're doing some, real time baking stuff, reflections tend to be faked. And they can be faked in a variety of ways. For example, you need to use, GI baking, reflection probes, light probes. Those are all tiny tricks that you can use to give the illusion that, you have realistic lighting. And again, it never have to
Yeah,
be perfect, especially when you work with shader stuff. It never have to be perfect. It needs to be believable. If you get it believable, and this means everything, that is that is up to you. So I think that I could make, for example, personally, I could make an entire like 6 hours video on how to make realistic lighting by simulating reflection on surfaces, and
yeah,
ray tracing and multiple scattering and stuff like that. um but it would be very specific. It would be very, very specific.
yeah,
And I tend not to be the guy that fakes stuff. We were talking about, for example, how Joyce, she's able to make very, very good stylistic decisions that makes her art very recognizable, and that's a style. So the reflection you would have in that style are very different from the reflection you would have on something I make. Because I think we have different aims, and maybe realism is not one. Maybe you can still have reflections, but that they are done in a specific way. I'm thinking, oh my god, what was the name? Light Matter. There's a game called Light Matter, which I really, really liked.
yeah,
And they spent a lot of time working on the tech, on the shader tech, because they needed to have shadows that interact and reflections that interacted with the gameplay. That is a very specific need that you have. And I know, for example, that The Witness had specific part of the game in which reflections played they play with the mechanics. That is really important. So you really need to know what you need out of those reflections, why they need to be in a certain way, and if you want to fake them, what do you need to fake them for, and how do they need to interact with something? Do they need to play a role in the gameplay? There are a lot of games that use shadows, for example, for gameplay. That's a nightmare. That's an absolute nightmare.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
when you know it, that's when you can start deciding basically what you need them for.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and Joyce mentioned in the chat that just copy the entire scene, which I guess he was joking about that, but Oscar actually does that in Bad
Oh,
North.
you mean like water
Uh,
reflection?
yeah,
Yeah.
like he just copies the entire scene. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
cool.
was thinking more about
So
like reflection, like mirror reflection, or like light reflection on multiple bouncing, light bouncing multiple times. Indirect lighting, that's what I was thinking about. Actually, I'm working on a tutorial
yeah,
about a shader that reflects geometry and does the bed north effect. And I sent a message to Oscar, and I was like, "Can I do a shader that replicates your stuff?" And he was like, "Okay, you can do it." It was really cool about that. But as it happens with all of my shaders, it will come out in 2025. So I don't know how some people manage to make one tutorial a week. I used to do that, and I died. I died inside a bit. So we also have a question from Salman asking, what are your opinions on blend modes? Don't really see much talks about it outside 2D engine stuff.
well, you don't really see a lot of talk around blend modes. That's true. But they're usually more useful really in VFX. Like I think also in the Diablo 3 talk, the GDC talk, they also mentioned a lot of stuff about the blending. I think that's where they mentioned it, where they have some sort of a mix of alpha blending and additive blending, so it doesn't get too blown off or too dark, just like right in the middle. And I think Unity has that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, if you play around with the source and the destination and the blend mode, you can actually get a lot of different effects. I mean, there's not really, I can't really have an opinion on them, really. They're mostly useful for VFX and for readability purposes, but other than that.
So
No.
Joyce says, I think Mario 64 does it by mirroring the whole scene in that one room. So, I mean, again, whatever is easier, and also you have to understand this. If we could replicate every photon that comes out of every light source in the room, we would have a perfect, completely indistinguishable, physically based rendering. We probably will never be able to do that unless we have a quantum computing. So unless we have a quantum GPU, all 3D graphics is faked. Even the techniques that are, the most physically based are faked. And again, that's okay, because you only need, first of all, not all games require to be perfect, to be physically accurate. But also, even if they do, you only need to be accurate to the pixel level. So there's a lot of cheating, there's a lot of faking, even in VFX for movies that can be rendered over months of time. So sometimes it's easier to get your own style rather than trying to replicate reality. Also because it's the same thing. It's the same problem, for example, that happens if you want to go photorealistic with skin shader. Skin is one of the most complex material because it's actually alive, and there's so much going on in the skin that makes it look like this. So make it a skin shader that is good is incredibly challenging, and sometimes it's just easier to find a style, and then not, or any tiny. The more realistic it looks, the easier it is to get something uncanny. So I think this is why, maybe to go back to a previous question, a lot of games looks good because they cheat by having a style that is not photorealistic, and so you avoid uncanny valley entirely. But at least that's my take. That's my take on that.
Yeah. No, I get it, and that's also why I wasn't like drooling over the Unreal Engine 5 demo. I mean, it was like a marvelous thing, and like the tech behind it is like crazy. But I was like, it looks real, but it's all brown and blonde, and I don't know, it doesn't look interesting to me, at least. I mean, I would rather have 10 more Hyperlight Drifter like games than something that looks like so pretty, but it is pretty shallow, as Salman I think mentioned.
Yeah. So we have also another question from Mitch saying, Rocky does really interesting things with faking environments, lighting and shadow in a flat shaded style by tinting the character. I think the name is not new. I think I know the game you're mentioning. It doesn't come immediately to my mind. And Guillaume says something really, really sweet. He says, the techniques try to emulate reality, not simulate it. Yes, I think that's a nice ways of putting it. It's all faked. and for example, I'm teaching artificial intelligence, and the first things I say is that I'm teaching artificial intelligence for games. So what we want to do is to use artificial intelligence as a tool to improve the player experience. We're not trying to solve Go. So we don't need cutting edge machine learning. We need something that makes people feel engaged. In the same way, shaders don't need to reproduce reality. We need them to make sure that we have a compelling experience, a compelling visual experience for the player. And as long as it works, it works. To go back to the bottle shader, it doesn't need to have water simulation. It doesn't need to have Navier-Stokes equations. And even that, I don't think they would work with different densities. It doesn't need to have, sort of Euler simulation of liquid. It needs to look believable, and it needs to give an interesting and playful experience. That's what we need shaders for in games. If you need to do a real life simulation, maybe it's not a game. Maybe it's an actual scientific simulation, and probably Unity is not the right tool. But I think there's space for both. That's what I think makes it interesting. We have Angelo saying Unreal Engine 5 tech will probably speed up some workflow steps for us poor environment artists. Yes, I think I've seen the demo of Unreal. It's beautiful, and I think that they're definitely on the right track, because the tech that they're working on, the sort of LOD automatic streaming, infinitely many polygon tech. Yes, I can see AAA using it really, really well, but also I can see it being used, for example, for procedural generation content. So maybe, you can have almost infinite precision for that. And I can see that tech being used, for example, for archaeology, to reconstruct existing monuments. I can see use in medical fields. So for me, suddenly Unreal has opened many more possibilities beyond games. Personally, you give me a cube, I'm fine with that. But I can see it being used for so many things beyond games. I think it's almost a crime that we have that power and we use it for games. I think it's borderline crime. So I really can't wait to see what people are going to use it for beyond game developments. Basically, that's my take, because I do a lot of stuff that is not necessarily just game. They also added a lot of LiDAR features in the latest release. I have not seen a lot of that. I've downloaded it, LiDAR, I don't know, data from London, because I wanted to do a cool tutorial on that. It's on my list of stuff to do for forever. I will die probably before having a chance of doing that. I need an army of shader masters and shader witches to shader witches and shader warlocks to make actual to make all the tutorials I actually have in mind. But I think I'm really interested in seeing that kind of tech going on. Now, we've been gone a bit over the hour, I promise, but I'm always happy to chat longer, when people are interested and when people are interesting to talk to, I guess. And also, I'm always happy to have guests coming over if we didn't manage to cover all the things and all the topics that we have. But I think that we cover most of the things that we wanted to talk today, and probably we're getting towards the end of this chat. Now, to the people that are still watching, I would say stay a bit longer, because I have a couple of things to show you at the end. That I'm doing clickbait, right? But I will show you a preview of something that I hope some of you will appreciate it. At least for me, it's a big deal. At least for me. So stay a few minutes more, and hopefully you will have a glimpse of that. I can't promise you won't regret it, but hopefully you will find it interesting. So with that being said, I see that there haven't been any new question for a couple of minutes. So hopefully we managed to answer all of them. So with that being said, thank you so much, Harry, for being here today. It
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. That was really
And
fun.
it was really a pleasure because actually it's literally well the second time we managed to talk almost in person, I guess, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll manage to meet at one of the many events. And again, if you're ever in
Oh
London,
yeah.
let me know, and we'll be very happy to have teas and cakes uh, at some point. And you can find Harry's links below in the description box. Is that how it's called? So if you want to follow him, if you want to support him, that is really interesting. And now I know that Harry, you're not publishing, or you're publishing a bit less now because you're doing your military service in Greece. But of course, he's still active, he's still alive, he's still doing stuff, and maybe this is a good time to support creators that you like, even when maybe they're not as active. Maybe because they're not as active, they probably need more support than usual. But again, you find all of his links down below. So if you want to look at his tutorials, look at his articles at his blog, or support him, you can find that. So hopefully we can do that. Harry, is there anything else you want to add to the conversation? Are you working on anything new? Or is there anything else you want to add to the conversation?
No, I think I'm good. Can't really think of anything else.
Okay, so with that being said, thank you so much for being here tonight, and hopefully we will chat. We will chat soon. See you later, Harry.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
before we go, I just want to first introduce the guest that we are going to have next week. It's Alex Johansson. He's a pretty well-known game developer here in the London scene, and he has worked on a variety of different projects. One, maybe the most famous or the most popular one, I think it's Corporate Salmon, which is a very weird game where you are the salmon that you need to climb up stairs. It's an escalator. It's a really cool game, and he actually I was told that he actually reached over 1 million downloads very recently, just a few days ago. So it's always a good thing to hear. And also I'm really glad that we're going to have Alex next week, because he has just released a new game called 100% Golf, which I've just discovered. It's first in the sports category on the App Store. And usually I have a lot of conversations with people that are more on the indie side and work on tutorials, education, or creative projects. While I think Alex has done a bit of both, and he has clearly done a lot of mobile stuff. So I'm really interested in having a discussion on that and seeing where the conversation will go, and maybe talking a bit about the sort of division between being an indie and making content that is also more appealing for a wider audience. Now, for the thing that I wanted to talk about, some of you know that I've been planning on starting releasing videos. Of course, this is a video, but I'm cheating. It's a bit of a live stream. I've been very keen in start working on proper video essays. Not really tutorials, more video essays where I talk about specific topics. And I don't know if any of you can recognize what's on screen now. It's a game called Creatures. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much, but the first video will release on the 22nd of June, which is my birthday, incidentally, or maybe because of that. It will be a video about the AI of Creatures. It will be a proper 20 plus minutes essay that goes through how the AI works. It's a topic, of course, I teach, but this is also a game that changed my life. So I think it was very fitted to talk about this. And you will not believe the crazy length I went to make this video and to resurrect the lost knowledge of how creatures actually worked. And yes, I managed to emulate the game on Windows 98 just so I could take this video. So if that's not a reason to hit the subscribe button, I don't know what else could be. But so with that said, as I always do, I want to thank all the people that are first of all watching today, that have been following the show, but also all the people that have been supporting me on Patreon. I would have not been able to do the stuff I do without all these awesome people here on Patreon. We live in a world where we have the creators like me have a chance to create content online because they've been supported. They've been supported on Patreon, and it's true for me. It's true, I think, for people like Harry as well. Also I want to mention that if you like the stuff I do, of course, I would be very happy to be supported, but we also live in a time where there's a lot of creators that unfortunately are underrepresented, and because of that, they have fewer chances of getting maybe the amount of support that I have. So if this month you're undecided and you see someone else that is not me, maybe, that you think might be worth supporting or giving a chance, maybe give them a chance. Sometimes we expect people to create content because we pay them. Well, think the opposite. Maybe it's the support that will allow them to create more content. So maybe supporting a creator that is just starting, even if they don't have enough content for you now, will allow them to make more content for you in the future. So it's a very good way to get them started, I guess. And I think that with everything that is going on right now, finding people from underrepresented groups that might need a bit of support and a bit of representation, I think it's Patreon could be a very good way of doing that. Of course, as I say, don't stop supporting me. I need to eat as well. But I also have a full-time job. We don't know for how long with coronavirus and everything, but I also have that. Support the people that makes content that you enjoy watching, and you can do it in many ways. You can click the subscribe button. Don't click the bell. I hate the bell, so I wouldn't advise anyone to click the bell. But you can also follow people on Patreon. Follow me, follow Harry. Follow any other guest, any other person that creates content you enjoy. Now I think that I'm starting to talk too much, so probably it's a good time to stop here. Once again, thank you so much to all the people in the chat that left comment, and to all the people that interacted with us and that are watching. Hopefully you will join me next time as well. Bye. Thank you.